Hey there! I'm Sarah A. Chrisman, the author of the Tales of Chetzemoka and other books about the Victorian era. And my birthday's coming up, so today I'm going to make a rose cake. This is the cake that Addie had for her birthday party in Delivery Delayed. And the recipe originally comes from one of my 19th century cookbooks, but it's also in the back of Delivery Delayed. I'm a bit obsessed with roses. This is my favorite cake. A recipe for rose cake. 1/2 cup white sugar, 1/2 cup red sugar, 1/2 cup butter, 1/2 cup milk, 2 cups flour, 1 teaspoon baking powder, flavor with rose. Beat the butter and sugar to a cream, then add the red sugar, milk and flour, and the baking powder, whites of 6 eggs beaten to a froth the last thing. Bake in a slow oven. This recipe fills an 8 by 8 inch square pan. I always like to butter and flour my pan before I mix my cake batter to make things easier on myself later. Terminology about sugar has shifted and changed from time to time and place to place. The phrase white sugar refers to what we now call granulated sugar, although those of you who've read my book 3 Women a Wheel will remember Ethel's pedantic complaint about pulverized sugar being white as well. Red sugar is just white, or what we'd call granulated sugar, with red food coloring added to it. You can find it in the cake decorating sections of big supermarkets, but it's much cheaper to make your own. Just add about 10 drops of coloring to 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. Foods have been dyed with various natural additives since before the Common Era, and the first artificial food dyes were introduced in 1856. By the 1880s, there were so many different types on the market, America set up federal regulations about their use. For rose flavoring, it's an unfortunate reality that in the 20th century, rose flavoring lost popularity in America. It is still really popular in other places in the world. It gets used in candy and cakes in France. It's very popular in Middle Eastern cuisine and in Turkish desserts. But in America, unfortunately, we have trouble finding it. So you can sometimes find rose water in the international sections of really big grocery stores, or if you live in a big city, you can go to a Middle Eastern shop or a Turkish store and find rose water. Also, sometimes French shops will have rose water or rose flavoring. And something that I've noticed very recently, just within the last year or so, that I'm quite happy about, interestingly enough, the liquor sections of supermarkets are starting to have rose flavoring where they carry their mixers, so like the Bloody Mary tonic and that sort of thing. They'll often have rose water, which I'm pretty pleased about. I don't drink alcohol, but I'll go into that aisle to get my rose water. And the different types of rose flavoring are going to vary greatly in their strength. So there's no hard and fast rule with this. Unfortunately, I can't give you a dictate of use this much. You're just going to have to wing it a little depending on how strong what you have is. And you can tell that by sniffing it or tasting it. If it's real dilute, like this one's pretty weak, you might use as much as a 1/2 cup. If you've got a really strong flavoring, it might be as little as a few tablespoons. It depends on what you're using and what your particular tastes are and how strong you want things to be. actually a really fun Victorian invention because before people came up with this in the 19th century, baking took a long time. Anyone who's worked with yeast knows how long that takes. But baking powder really sped up things a lot. And it also made cakes less sour. Any of the rising agents they'd had before then tended to be a little like sourdough. And so they weren't that great with cakes. The cakes tend to be really heavy, like fruit cake it still is. But baking powder gave us nice light cakes, and I just love the little story that's told by the picture on here, because this is a reference to those quick breads, the biscuits and muffins that they were able to make when they started using this. Because in the background, we've got the poor, overworked mother covered with children who has probably been making a yeast bread, who's obviously just very worn down. And in the foreground, we have this hip young girl with her baking powder biscuits who's saying, "Bye-bye, Mom, I'm done already, see you later." So, with eggs, it's always a good idea to break them separately into a bowl before you break them into the full mixing bowl. And that's just in case one of them winds up being rotten. You don't want to wind up having one bad egg spoil the whole batch. And if they have gone bad, believe me, you will notice. You will notice very, very quickly. At 300 degrees Fahrenheit, this cake will be ready in about 50 minutes, but this will vary slightly depending on the volume of liquid you added for flavoring it. You'll want to check it after about 40 minutes. When a piece of straw or a toothpick inserted in the center comes out clean, it's done. Turn it out of its pan and let it cool, then ice it with your favorite frosting. I'm partial to buttercream, personally. Fresh flowers make a beautiful addition to this cake. Roses are ideal, of course, but mine aren't blooming yet, so I'm using fresh primroses from my garden, along with just a few crystallized rose petals from a French candy maker. And now I've got my birthday cake. Thank you for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this video. My special birthday request to all of you is that you share the video with all your friends, and remember to tell them about my books, especially the books that have this recipe in them. That's Delivery Delayed and my anthology of Victorian Rose poetry and short stories, and little tidbits about roses. That's why the recipe's in there. Happy reading, and have a great day.
Beautiful garden of roses, kissed by the golden dew, each pretty flower